Raspberry lemonade cupcakes. And I know what you're thinking, Joni, why didn't you make your own cupcakes? I could have made cupcakes, but instead I spent like 2 hours messing around with pancakes. What's shakin' bacon? I'm Joni Simon, and this is The Bite Shot, where I share with you how I do my food photography in hopes that perhaps it might be able to help you out in your food photography journey, or even any sort of general still photography that you're doing. There's definitely things to learn here, and if you have any feedback or thoughts about how you're doing what you do, I love hearing from you guys in the comments, so feel free to share below. But today what we're gonna launch into is how to position your food relative to the light source that you have. Because this is one of those things, when I first started doing photography, I didn't really think about where's the source of the light coming from and how is that impacting the image that I'm shooting. And in reality, the light is huge. I mean, when we talk about being photographers, as much as we know how to work a camera and that's a very important tool, the light is a bigger, more important tool. That really can make or break an image. And how you position that light relative to the food that you're shooting, well, that makes all the difference. So let me show you here with our little cupcakes today. Don't those look tasty? So one of the big things that you might have already heard before about lighting your food is never light it directly from the front. So like, don't use your flash on your camera or on your phone, because what that is doing is that's lighting purely just the front of that food, and it's gonna make for a super flat image. So if we do that here with these cupcakes, you can see it's a really flat image. It lacks character. We don't get that three-dimensionality that really makes us want to reach out and grab it. So for folks who are just starting out with food photography, what I will tell them to do is to find a window and to go at a 90-degree angle from that window. So let's get a little sketch going here and show you how this works. So you've got your window and you've got your food, and then you position yourself at a 90-degree angle, right? We get that little L going on. So in essence, you have the light coming through the window, hitting that food there on the side, and that's gonna create a nice little rounded effect. We're gonna get lighting on the one side, shadows on the other, and as I shoot into that, it's gonna look a lot more 3D. But definitely experiment with the windows that you have in your house and put whatever food that you're working with that day there in that position and shoot at 90 degrees toward it and just see what happens. You just see what happens. Now, as you're experimenting with playing with this window, you might still find though that it's like super bright on one side and super dark on the other. And that has to do with the quality of the light that is coming through the window, has to deal with, you know, the position of the sun relative to the window. All sorts of factors go into that, and that'll be a later video. But definitely you want to look for either a north-facing or a south-facing window, just because you're not going to have that direct sunlight the same way that you would have with an east or west, just based on the sun rising or the sun setting. But if you're in a north or south facing window and you see that it's still super bright, like if you look out that window and there's no overhang at all and it's just literally the sun coming straight through that window, you can see those harsh lines, then what you can do is get some diffusion material, which there are, you know, photographic quality diffusion material that you can buy online. Or you can just get a thin white curtain. That really works well. You can put that over the window that you plan to shoot from. Or you get parchment paper and you can tape that up in the window, and that'll also create some diffused light. And when we talk about diffused, is that it's just not as harsh. That's sort of breaking that light up so that it makes softer shadows. And you'll really notice the difference. If you kind of start to look at different pictures, different images, you see harsh shadows versus soft shadows. So a lot of that has to do with where is the light coming through that window and how is that impacting those shadows. Definitely, if you've got particular questions about the orientation of your window and how it works, feel free to let me know. You can email me, you can message me, send me pictures. I'm happy to give you my feedback and recommendations on how to work around the specific challenges that are the windows that you have in your house or wherever you happen to be shooting. So a lot of the shots that I take can definitely be at that 90-degree angle. We get those beautiful shadows there on the side. But a lot of what I do is kind of play around and see how the light maybe works at a 120-degree angle or even 180 degrees. And this is counterintuitive to so much of the photography. I know when I was growing up, they'd say, don't shoot into the light source, right? You don't want a light source directly behind your subject. And that's true if you're shooting in auto, but because you're badass and you can shoot in manual, you can make some adjustments so that we can use an effect called backlighting. And it's something that I love to do. As you start to look at a lot of photos and kind of dissect them and try to understand them, you'll see a lot of food photographers, a lot of food bloggers will use backlighting as a technique to light their food. And I think it's really beautiful, especially in dishes that are in bowls or aren't too tall, something that you can get that really nice light source coming in, grazing the top of it, creating a little light just on the front and the sides. I think it's really beautiful. It's really cool too with beverages because you're shooting through that beverage and you kind of see the luminosity coming through. So it's just something to play with, to experiment with, is where is the light source and how is that impacting your food and how it's looking. So something I like to do in my food photography classes is give people a little challenge to see if you can identify in various pictures where the light source is coming from. Now, this can get a little bit tricky, especially with some high-end commercial food photography, because a lot of times they will have multiple light sources going on, or they're using composite shots where they're lighting it in different images and combining those all into one in the post-processing, which that's very complicated. So we're gonna keep it simple right now and just talk about the basics of training your eye to look at an image to understand where is the light source coming from. Because as you start to get a more critical eye looking at other people's work, it's gonna help improve yours. I know that for me, I can definitely get a little competitive sometimes looking at other people's images going, oh gosh, why aren't mine so awesome like theirs, and theirs is so great? Don't get into that headspace. Get into photography that you can look at and understand and dissect, and it gives you a much more critical eye, and it helps train your eye so that when you're looking through the viewfinder at your own food, you can really start to incorporate some of those things you have learned mentally from looking at other images. Of course, what we've been talking about is photography indoors, because we're relying on that window, that north-facing window, to provide some beautiful natural light. But it is important then to turn off the rest of the lights inside, because you don't want to disrupt the beautiful shadows that you're creating. Because say, for example, you're shooting at 90 degrees, you've got that light coming through the window, but then you have some sort of lamp over here, it's going to interfere with that, not only the color of that light, but additionally it's going to create some weird shadows for you. So be sure before you're shooting anything, whatever room you're doing it in, shut off all the other lights and rely solely on that window as the source of light. And then you can take things to the next level with a bounce card, because of course that light coming through the window is our sole source of light, but we might want to manipulate that light a little bit, and we can do that with a white piece of poster board. You don't have to get something super expensive. You can even just have a white piece of paper. I like some sort of foam board just because I can prop it up and move it around next to the food. But what's going to happen is that light coming through the window is going to hit that white card, and it's going to reflect back just a little bit, just going to cast a little extra bit of light, so that if it's really dark on one side, you can just illuminate it a little bit more, help the light out to reach around that food, to reach around that cupcake. So hopefully this little tutorial gave you some new ideas, some new ways to shoot your food, some fun things to play with and experiment with. Of course, there are so many elements to these things, and my brain starts just flying saying, oh, well, you got to think about this and you got to think about this. But that's why I've just got so many more video opportunities on this channel. So, food photography, it's all about one step at a time, one little experiment at a time. And as you compound all those experiments, all those little lessons learned, suddenly your food's going to change. Photography is going to change. It's going to be epic. But hopefully this was helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below. I love to hear from you. And if you're not already, be sure to subscribe, because I will be back with another video at some point which will help illuminate further how to take fabulous food photography, and a great chance for us to hang out here in the studio. So if you like this video, give it that big old thumbs up. attention. I love attention. Doesn't everybody who has some sort of YouTube channel love attention? Like, that's why we do this, right? Thank you for hanging out with me. Thanks for putting up with me. I hope you have a wonderful day. You stay out of trouble, and I'll see you soon. All right? Bye. I mean, I give the kids credit for picking out the prettiest ones. And these are nice because they're not all white. All white things can be a little challenging to shoot. But the question is, does a raspberry lemon actually taste good? Oh, it's got like lemon filling in there. Tastes like lemonade. I actually super dig that frosting. High five to Sprouts for having some pretty dang good baked goods right there.